Have you ever heard of the story about a frog with a pot of hot water? If you drop a frog in the pot of hot water, it will jump out. But if the frog was put in lukewarm water and the temperature of the water is raised gradually, the frog won't realize the threat until it's too late. The frog in the lukewarm water didn't have the ability to reassess the situation. But is it just the frog that's lacking in ability? Perhaps we could be the frog. Hello and welcome to UQ. Today I will talk about Adam Grant's latest New York Times bestseller, Think Again. The book teaches you how to revise and update your thoughts and beliefs in a constantly changing world. Sometimes we don't even realize that we are fixated on one way of thinking, and it could limit our possibilities. By gaining the ability to rethink, you'll be more flexible in your thinking. This skill is crucial to make good decisions in your life. The first chapter, Individual Rethinking, and the concluding chapter, which I will talk about, particularly resonated with me. So in this video, I would like to share my key takeaways. Let's get started. BlackBerry was a superpower in the smartphone market. It accounted for nearly 50% of market sales in 2009. However, since the release of Apple iPhone, BlackBerry's share declined dramatically to just 1% in 5 years. How did that happen? The inventor of BlackBerry, Mike Lazaridis, was fixated with an idea that consumers would just want a device that could make calls and send and receive emails, and that the keyboard is one of the reasons they buy BlackBerries. Mike struggled with rethinking and the company failed to adapt. Just like Adam Grant, I personally preferred the keyboard to the touchscreen as well, because my thumbs are just too big for a phone touchscreen and I make typos all the time. But the lesson here is that failure to rethink could take a toll. We all make similar mistakes all the time. The right answer yesterday might not be correct today, but we don't realize the problem as the damage is not so great to begin with. Like you just expect your squeaky brakes to be fine and finally they fail on the highway, or you assume your marriage is fine and you don't notice your partner has become emotionally more distant. By the time you realize the problem, it is too late. So why is it so difficult to rethink and update our thoughts? It's because we have two biases. One is confirmation bias and the other is desirability bias. Confirmation bias is the tendency of human beings to actively search for, interpret and retain information that matches our existing beliefs. We tend to ignore information that contradicts our beliefs and place more importance on the one that supports our beliefs. Desirability bias is our tendency to see what we want to see. You may think, I'll be fine, I'm not biased. Fair enough, but that means probably you've got an I am not biased bias. The smarter you are, the more likely you've fallen into this trap. Having doubts about our beliefs and rethinking is not easy. We're comfortable with the way we've always done things, but we need to realize that we are biased. By the way, there is more to the story about the frog and the boiling water. The author did research and found that the story isn't true. If the frog is tossed into a pot of boiling water, it will get hurt badly and may or may not escape. The frog in lukewarm water is actually better off. It can hop out when the water temperature becomes uncomfortable. It is not the frog, but us who needed to reassess the situation. We need to know how to rethink. So how can we do that? There are 3 prescriptions to cure this fixed mindset type of thinking. The first thing we could do is to train ourselves to think like a scientist. That means we constantly question what we know, be aware of our limitations, and update our views to fit in with new data. We need to develop hypotheses and run experiments to test them and rely on the evidence. In a study, over 100 Italian entrepreneurs who attended a training program were randomly assigned to a scientific thinking group or a control group. The training program was exactly the same, except that the scientific thinking group was told to think like scientists. The scientific thinking group were told that their strategy was a theory and that they need to develop hypotheses through customer interviews. Then they were to run experiments to test the hypotheses with minimum viable products and prototypes. The results? The average revenue of the scientific thinking group was 40 times more than the control group. Scientifically minded leaders are much more successful because they adjust their strategies based on data. The second thing we could do is be humbler and to find the right balance of humility and confidence. We tend to believe that confidence is a good thing, and it is most of the time, but false confidence can make us blind to our blindness. It's the Socrates paradox. We don't know what we don't know. In one study, participants were asked to estimate their performance on grammar, logic, and humour tests. After completing the tests, researchers found that those who scored lowest tended to significantly overestimate their abilities. This is called the Dunning-Kruger effect. People with low ability, expertise, or experience in a certain area of knowledge or a type of task tend to overestimate their ability or knowledge. Socrates said, "I am wiser than this man, for neither of us appears to know anything great and good, but he fancies he knows something, although he knows nothing, whereas as I do not know anything, I do not fancy I do. In this trifling particular, then, I appear to be wiser than he, because I do not fancy I know what I do not know." When we become more humble and admit that there is a lot we don't know, we will be more open-minded to learn new things and become more competent. Instead of being confident in our knowledge or beliefs, we need to be confident in our ability to learn and the ability to eventually achieve our goals. And at the same time, we need to be humble to question whether we are currently using the right tools to get there. The third thing we could do is admit we might have been wrong and to constantly rethink. When our core belief is challenged, we tend to fool ourselves and refuse to rethink. This is because the amygdala is triggered. The amygdala is a part of our brain that is primarily involved in the processing of emotions and memories associated with fears, and it activates a fight or flight response. That is why it is hard to question ourselves. It is hard to admit that we may be wrong. What we can do is define ourselves by our values, not by our beliefs. So when we have doubts about our beliefs, it is easier to change our mind because it does not change our identity. When we become more secure and can be more comfortable about admitting our own mistakes, we can make fun of ourselves. Research suggests that the more often we can laugh at ourselves, the happier we can be. It was also found that admitting we were wrong doesn't make us look less competent. Rather, it will make us look more honest, and we are likely to be judged more favourably if we admit the mistakes and acknowledge the new information. Jeff Bezos of Amazon says, "If you don't change your mind frequently, you are going to be wrong a lot." We need to learn that it is okay to be wrong. We are our values, not our beliefs. It's not a bad thing to be wrong. If we find we were wrong, that means we gained new knowledge and we are one step closer to the truth. To question ourselves and rethink doesn't bring the loss of identity. It will help us learn more and change our view of the world. In this rapidly changing world, it is important to think like a scientist and be humble to admit we might be wrong and constantly update our views. To summarise, I would like to introduce what the author Adam Grant said in the book. Every time we encounter new information, we have a choice. We can attach our opinions to our identities and stand our ground into the stubbornness of preaching and prosecuting, or we can operate more like scientists, defining ourselves as people committed to the pursuit of truth, even if it means proving our own views wrong. The concluding chapter, Escaping Tunnel Vision, Reconsidering Our Best Laid Career and Life Plans, was also insightful and made me rethink my own career and life plans. It describes the term identity foreclosure. This happens when we settle prematurely on a sense of self without enough due diligence and close our minds to alternative selves, according to Grant. Identity foreclosure can happen at any time in life. It can just happen that you set your sights on one target which ultimately might not be the right fit for you. Grant suggests that you set up a regular meeting cadence with yourself to assess whether your aspirations remain the same, whether you're still learning in your job role, and whether it's time to rethink or pivot within or even outside your current career path. Course correction is required throughout life to prevent the feeling of becoming stuck in a rut. Today I talked about the best-selling book Think Again by Adam Grant. I mainly focused on individual rethinking, but if you are interested in how to win debates and persuade other people, or creating communities of lifelong learners, I strongly recommend you read this book. I put the link to the book in the description, so if you're interested, please pick up a copy and read it yourself. In this channel UQ, I talk about great books that could change your life for the better in terms of health, wealth, relationships, and happiness in general. I'm also going to talk more about scientific and medical studies so we can improve ourselves based on proven knowledge. If you have watched this video this far, it means you are motivated and you're already doing well. If you want to learn more to improve your life, please like and subscribe to this channel. Thank you for watching.